My name is Ife Afriye Fagbulu Kilimanjaro, but I prefer to be called Ife, or that's what I'm known as, and that is just fine. My relationship with the moon is respectful, evolving, and connected. I feel like it's important to say that I don't have a set of teachings about the moon that has been passed to me from my elders, or from elders in my familial or spiritual lineages. That and why I feel that's important to say is that as a Black woman who was born in Detroit and grew up in Detroit and Ohio, there have been memories that have been lost over the generations, and because of the movement and migrations, both forced and chosen. And in the course of the birth of each new generation and the journey that members of that generation took that ultimately paved the way for my being here, there were things that have been forgotten. And I imagine that if there were moon teachings that we once held, they've been forgotten in the course of our journey. And but that said, I have gotten some things over the years of my living on this earth. My body, for example, has taught me about the moon through the blood that flows through my womb, and has taught me about the cycles of moon, the cycles of life, of death, the cycles of being born and reborn at different stages of my life. So it's in one way that my body has been a keeper of memory and has taught me those things about the moon and the role that she plays in cycles, in these cycles of life. The ocean has taught me about the moon, or I've made, perhaps the moon has taught me about the ocean. And an example that I'll give specifically was that I had the opportunity to spend a few months in Senegal, and I stayed in a small village that was on the coast, a few hours south of Dakar, and it was in those moments where the moon was full that the tide came in so strong and powerful and high. I often visited a friend of mine, one of my sisters there, who stayed in a little place right on the beach, but back, so there was a good distance between the water at low tide and her house. But when the tide came in, high tide on full moons, the moon came, or the waters came into the back of her house. They came all the way up the stairs and into the back of her house. And so what the oceans taught me, again, in seeing these cycles, but there's a beautiful lesson about releasing, because it's almost like the waters came to grab things and take them back with them. And so it became this beautiful time during my time there where we would let things go in these moments, during high tide, and the ocean would take those things from us and cycle it digest it, compost it, through its processes. And in that, the things that I was releasing, that I was letting go of, that no longer served me, um, they were taken away. So that's something that sits with me, about the something, a teaching that came from the water about the moon. And I would say that, as I mentioned my body, but as a Black woman, something that in the experience of my people in escaping a system of enslavement in relatively recent history, the what my people have taught me about the moon, and particularly the various cycles, or the different days in the cycle of the moon. There emits varying degrees of light that have helped to illuminate the path of people who were traveling and had to travel by night in order to escape and to leave behind the horrific conditions that they were forced to live under, at different points in our history. And so there's like a cultural history of the role that the moon has played in illuminating the steps and accompanying the traveler who traveled at night. Of course, stars, various star systems also helped, but it was the powerful light of the moon that really shine the way, or excuse me, lit the way. And I guess one of the last things that I'll say is that, when I sat with that teaching from the history of my people, it helped me to go back even a bit further and remember, in my studies of ancient Egypt, hieroglyphics, meta-nature, or meta-nature is what we call hieroglyphics, and Kemet is the name that we call the ancient Egypt. And so Kemet, in Kemet, at various points in history, there was a deity that, or a name given to what was referred to as a deity of the moon, Khonsu. And Khonsu is associated with with travel. And so, to sit with those kind of reflections, there are of course other things that, other associations that Khonsu had, but one of them was for the traveler, particularly the traveler at night, providing protection and illumination for that journey. So those are like different snippets of teachings that I've collected, and I look forward to continuing to learn more as I'm on a journey, that a Sacred Waters pilgrimage along the Mississippi, where it's about healing relationships between Black and Native Indigenous people through women who are walking along that journey, who are carrying the waters, and we're healing our relationships within this. We're working on endeavoring to begin the process of healing our relationships in this lifetime, as well as ancestral relationships, with the support and the witness and participation of the Mississippi River as we move along. And we're also praying for healing of the lands, of those who are tied to the lands, both seen and unseen, and of the waters themselves. So many of the stops that we've made along the journey have been under the light of the full moon. And so we've participated in full moon ceremony on those stops, as a way of inviting the energy of the moon in her fullness to support the release of all of those things that stop us from really being connected with one another, from healing with one another, and releasing those things that no longer serve us, as we are trying to really heal together and work together to bring about the kind of change that we need, that our future generations need, that society needs, so systems change as well, change all of the different levels. And so the moon has been playing a really valuable part in that process. The practices that I have around the moon personally and in community with others has been releasing when the moon is full, when grandmother moon, our elder, my elder, is in the fullness of her light in the sky. And during the new moon, when we don't see grandmother moon at all in the sky, then this is a time where, through various simple rituals and practices, we invite those things that we want to call into our lives, the projects that we want to start, the energies we want to bring to us, the situations we want to call, the relationships and people that we want to draw. So those things that we want to draw and invite into our lives, then we do that on the full moon. And then the time in between, it gives the opportunity to kind of reinforce those asks by continuing the prayer and continuing to invite the moon's energy to support in that prayer, whether it is in the release or in the calling. And in those prayers and affirmations, between the full and the new moon, they serve as reminders for me as a human who is making these asks, to do my part. So the invitation to the moon isn't just to have her do all the work, but it's to invite her energy to support work that I want to make happen. So I have to do my part. And the time in between the full and the new moons allows me to do my part. So when the moon is new and I've made my ask to draw things to me, and I've put my call out, then I reinforce through affirmations and prayers, and in my own practice as a reminder to myself to do the work between that new moon and the full moon. That is the nature of that. And then when I move from the full to the new, the focus is continuing to support in the release. And so letting that go through that cycle. So some of the concrete practices is, so I've mentioned those like in general, but I don't always do this, but I do, I will, and I have created altars that are specific to, or that kind of hold that moon energy, but I'll change things up depending on what time. So if it's a new moon, then I'll kind of change up some of the things that are on the altar to reflect what I'm asking. And then when it's the full moon, then I'll put the things in there that kind of symbolize what I'm seeking to release, and they serve as reminders for me to, when I ask for that release and when I let that go and when I burn that thing up that I've written on this piece of paper, that I let it go and don't call it back to me, either in whether it's in my thought patterns or in my practices or anything like that. So once it's gone, and then the things that I put on the altar kind of help me to stay firm to that.